Thanks for checking out my video. If you want to learn more from me, I have a lot of classes on Udemy. You can find the links to a lot of those in the description.
All right. So, psychology behind doorways. Now, if you've ever done like guided meditations, you've ever been to an event where they have a guided meditation, there's usually a moment where you go through a doorway, something that takes you out of the initial visualization and then into a more deeper visualization. So there's this transition point. So in a lot of different events and stuff that I've been at or guided meditations that I've listened to, a lot of them, and we're going to start with like the stereotype kind of jazz, starts off with like you're walking through a path in the woods. And I'm never doing a guided meditation. I just don't have the voice for it. You're walking through a path in the woods and you go along this path and then it starts describing the scenery. Like, you hear some animals and you can feel the grass beneath your feet and maybe there's the wind and oh, you notice a flower over here, basically trying to give you a little bit of ADD. And then you come upon a cave or you see a tree, a large tree, and it's got a hole in the bottom. And you walk into that hole or you walk into that cave, right? And of course, what do we think when we hear like a cave or a hole in a tree? We're going to picture something that's like black, right? And you go into that cave or you go into the hole in that tree. And then it's almost like if you've ever looked at okay, let's say old school video games when they had like loading parts or loading triggers. Like, if you go back to like Nintendo 64 days, I'm dating myself, whatever, with The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, anytime that you enter a new area or a dungeon or something like that, the doorway is always dark black. Why? Because it allows the game to load a new area. So it shows a character running off into the dark part, and then boom, it loads the new area. So this dark space is what allows your brain to transition from a guided kind of part of the meditation and then allows your subconscious to take over. Now, the more that you meditate, whether it be, just counting your breaths of 1 2 1 2 1 2 and or 1 2 3 whatever counting, and then you're allowing your mind to just focus on that breathing, and then you have an ADD moment, you're wondering about dinner, and then you go back to the breathing, and then eventually you find yourself talking or thinking about something else in your head, and then you go back to the breathing. This is what allows your brain to stay focused on the idea of something, and then it your mind is freed up to allow different things to come in. And when we're doing guided meditations or we're doing journeying or something like that, we're trying to trick the conscious mind with this imagery to get us to a state where then the subconscious can come up, because that's really what we want to explore when we're doing journeying and different guided meditations and stuff like that, because we're seeking an answer, we're seeking something that we're trying to get at and explore and whatnot. So once you go through that doorway, that's really kind of triggering your subconscious to open a doorway. And then once you make it through this transitional doorway, then that's when your brain can open up. So once you go through a doorway, what you're trying to do is your subconscious mind is thinking of the doorway, and your subconscious then says, I know what's on the other side. And then you start to bring that stuff out. And you'll even notice in guided meditations and stuff, that's when the different ideas and descriptions get more open rather than directly describing what you should see or what you should feel or what you should hear or whatever. Then it's more of a general idea, which then your brain fills in the blanks. And that's when your subconscious comes out. So doorways always open up to new and different areas, or, in this case, doors, caves, holes in trees. And that's what allows your brain to start opening up. And the more and more and more that you practice these kinds of things, even if it's not a guided meditation, but you allow yourself to have almost like a base camp kind of thing when you start meditating, and then you go through a doorway or something like that when you're seeking an answer, then you can go into all sorts of different things to find all sorts of different answers for things. So let's talk about like the base camp kind of stuff for a second. Earlier, I talked about how a lot of them always start off with you're walking in the woods and yada, yada, yada. Find something that you can kind of stick with as far as a base camp kind of thing. It might be walking through some woods, and then the path might be slightly different every time that you start there. So we start with a question like, I want to explore my childhood, or I'm thinking about this traumatic event that happened to me and I want to, explore it, or something like that. And then you start off in this base camp kind of area and you start walking around and you're seeking that answer. And maybe the path goes off to the left once, and maybe the path goes off to the right another time, or maybe it goes straight, or maybe it first veers off to the left and then you kept going more and more on that way the first time, and then maybe the next time with a different question, it then has a fork in it, something like that. Allow your brain to kind of free itself up and create these kinds of things. The less control that we have and the more that we just allow these images to flow, the better we're going to be at being able to truly open our subconscious mind and explore the different answers that we're trying to get at. So, like for me, probably from reading House of Leaves and even Real Magic, the novel I wrote, it's for sale on Amazon. You guys can find that through the link in the description that goes to my website, magick-af.com. And if you're ever interested in reading that, it took me 6 months to write it. I love it. But, I'm sitting on my own soapbox here. And where was I? Base camp kind of stuff. So for me, it's a hallway with tons and tons and tons of different doors. And I'll go up to a door and maybe there's a symbol on the door. Maybe the doorknob is circle shaped. Maybe it's one of those kind of just a handle that you then have to tilt at a 90 degrees in order to open. Each time that I approach a different door, it's a different door. And then that triggers my brain to say, okay, we're going somewhere different this time. And the more that you build this subconscious like base camp kind of thing, then the stronger that gets, the less resources your brain has to use on creating that first aspect of it. And then the more that like your brain's like, oh, I know this is all familiar. This hallway keeps going. It's got candles on the walls and it's got all these different doors. My brain doesn't have to come up with that on the fly. It's distracted by this thing it already knows. And then where I'm going in my travel, that when I'm trying to seek an answer or something, then my brain's like, I got this over here. And then it allows the subconscious to come up and be like, oh yeah, we're talking about this, right? Let's explore that. So the more that you develop this base camp kind of thing, you might even want to just like write down a description of it. Or when you meditate and you start to do your 1 2 1 2 1 2 with your breathing, you can start to picture this area. Once you get into that habit of you're focusing on your breathing and you're allowing your brain to flow and you start to see images and things like that, then you can start to build this base camp, or actually what's a better term for it, more psychologically true, is parachosm, our inner world. You can literally create a map of a world inside your head that you can explore, and it can keep adding new and more new things every time that you go in there that can be symbolic of different things that you have explored in your subconscious and whatnot. You can even previously design these areas on a map that you can draw and say, this area is where I go to explore blank. This area is where I go to explore blank. This area is where I go to explore my past. This is where I go to explore my future. This is where I go about to explore my regrets. This is where I go to do an astral ritual. You can create this paracosm that allows your brain to open that subconscious filter, that subconscious doorway, and then you're able to go in there and further explore your subconscious. This has a lot of applications with things like shadow work. This has applications with things like power animal retrieval. This has applications with exploring and unpacking trauma, maybe even past lives, all sorts of different things. Because when we're tricking our conscious mind into an area and we almost like put it in a box with this, then that allows us to access our subconscious, which allows us to access the antenna, which connects us with the overall universe, multiverse, what have you, all those energetic layers of different things that we as magicians, magic practitioners, what have you, pick a title, whatnot, that we want to explore, to communicate with different spirits, to unpack our own junk, to further our spiritual journey. This one really, really good. So work on that base camp kind of stuff, and then you can build your doorways and let your subconscious tell you what's on the other side.
Thanks for watching my video. So if you want to check out my playlists, I have, among others, the Simon Necronomicon, the Tree of Life, General Magic, Tulpamancy, a playlist on my books, the elements, stones, the theories that govern magic, and the gods and goddesses of Mesopotamia. If you want to check out my books on Amazon, I have Creating Consciousness, Magical Mechanics, Magical Theater, Handy Sigil Magic, Magical Movement, which is an update and expansion upon Handy Sigil Magic, Magical Mastery, which is a combination masterwork of Magical Theater and Magical Mechanics, and The Guide to the Spheres and Beyond. You can also find me on Facebook at Magickology YT. You can email me at priestofthenecro@gmail.com, and you can even check out my Instagram, which is Magickology. And good hunting. You can also find me on Facebook at Magickology YT. You can email me at priestofthenecro@gmail.com, and you can even check out my Instagram, which is Magickology. And good hunting.